Hello, welcome back to Bebop Review. My name's Andy Shaw. I'm just looking at a video by Rick Beato called How to Solo Over Charlie Parker Tunes. In this video, Rick Beato's looking at a tune called Donnelly, which is put down as being written by Charlie Parker. Right, if you look further down at the comment section here, we've got a comment here by somebody called Antara Blue, and he says Donnelly was actually written by Miles Davis. And straight away, Rick Beato's come back and says, Antara Blue, and you know this how? Not only was it not written by him, and it's unlike any tune he ever wrote. He's credited as writing Blue and Green, but everyone that was around the time said Bill Evans wrote it. So Rick Beato is basically saying, because Miles Davis is a liar, he's wrote everything he says in his book, he's a lie. You can't take anything he says as being truthful. Right, and the other thing is, it says that Donnelly is not like a Miles Davis tune, therefore you should dismiss it. You know, which is a bit crazy because Benny Harris wrote Ornithology, and Ornithology is not like anything Benny Harris wrote either. You know, it goes on. This argument goes on down. There's a couple of counter moves against it, but the main thing I want to say is that Rick Beato says to this guy. He says, I'm terrible. Miles didn't even write half the tunes he credits as writing. You can tell this by a second quintet, which tunes Wayne Shorter wrote that Miles took credit for at Studio Jazzistra. Just because Miles Davis did that, actually stole somebody else's tune, it don't mean that he's lying over Donnelly. You know, he could be, but it don't. You know, but you can't accept his line as truth. But I'm saying today, most scholars actually would disagree with what Rick Beato says there. They're not convinced. The main argument seems to be that in the 1940s, Gil Evans, who was a arranger, right, for the Claude Thornhill Orchestra, which was a really good band at that time. It had players like Lee Konitz, who were doing some really strange stuff in that band, and Red Rodney was in the band. So there were beboppers in that band, you know, people who were influenced by Charlie Parker. And Gil Evans was actually also influenced by the bop movement. He wanted to write an arrangement of Donnelly, which eventually they did, right? And so he approached Parker and asked Parker for the right to record Donnelly. And Parker says, don't ask me, ask Miles Davis. And that's one of the main reasons why they're saying today that the tune has more to do with Miles Davis. The tune Donnelly has more to do with Miles Davis than it does Charlie Parker. With an important caveat, by the way. As some people have said, it doesn't really sound that much like a Miles Davis tune. So most scholars today are actually saying that Miles Davis did write Donnelly, but what it is he actually took the lines off Charlie Parker in the same way that Benny Harris took the lines to create Ornithology. So remember that Miles Davis at that time was playing every night with Charlie. He was on the bandstand with Charlie Parker. He was playing with him every night. So he was picking stuff up off Charlie Parker. So those lines on Donnelly most likely come from Charlie Parker, but they were organised and put together in a composition by Miles Davis. That's what scholars are pretty much saying nowadays. Now, that could be false as well, and Rick Beato could be totally right. But my argument's not whether this is right or wrong. It's the fact that Rick Beato is simply just attacked that guy, in my opinion, right, without foundation. Because he can't say for definite that Donnelly was written by Charlie Parker, because most scholars are now saying that it's most likely written by Miles Davis. And he's been very aggressive about it. He's attacking this guy. Now, if that's the case, why is it wrong that I attack Rick Beato in that video I made? Right, I just want to put that across to Rick Beato fans if they come to this video. Right, he's attacking people, so he's not immune to attack himself. And that's what I'm going to do in this. I actually want to talk about Rick Beato in this video, this one called How to Solo Over Charlie Parker Tunes. In my opinion, Rick Beato makes a lot of statements in here that I simply don't agree with. But one of the main ones is he says that F alt is derived or comes from G flat melodic minor, and I just want to say straight away that that's wrong. If you do look at F alt chord, let me just show you what it looks like. If you do look at F alt chord, right, which is this, you do get this scale. This is G flat melodic minor. You do find that every note in that scale matches that chord, no problem. But that don't mean to say that the actual chord, F alt, is derived from this scale, because it isn't. F alt is actually part of. It's something to do with chord substitution, which I'll talk about. It's the historical thing about history behind alt chords is that what happened is in the bebop era, and when chord structures were getting more complicated, substitute dominant chords, right, were having limitations, and those limitations were overcome by alt chords, if you know what I mean. What I'll do is I'll explain this as we go on in this course. What I'm saying now is that that scale, right, has got absolutely nothing to do with this chord. It just so happens that you can play that scale on that chord and all the notes will match, like Rick Beato says. But what he says is, he says that that chord comes from that scale, and it isn't. And I'll actually prove that to you in this course. I'll actually show you where alt chords come from. But if you think about scales, if you think about a major scale, so something like C major, which scale does C major come from? Well, it's hard to tell, isn't it? It could come from, or it could be built from a C major scale. It could be the first chord built on that, but it also could come from the scale of G major. It could be chord number 4, built from the 4th degree of G major, right? G, A, B, C. So you can build up a C trad from the 4th, can't you? But it could also come from the 5th of F major. You know what I mean? And then you go into minor scales and you find, you could find it in there as well. So it's difficult to say. You can't really say that a chord is derived or comes from a scale. What you can say is that we've built this chord up on this degree of this scale in this key, you know what I mean? And then that's a much better way of seeing it. But I just want to say, before we leave this, right, that is completely wrong about alt chords. Alt chords have got absolutely nothing to do with melodic minor scales, even though you can play melodic minor scales on those chords. It's certainly got nothing to do with it. It just happens to be something that musicians found and used that way of playing, I'll show you a much quicker way of working alt chords out than what Rick Beato shows you anyway. Okay.